Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
We're just working out where we're going to put Monty Python. But most importantly, where we're going to put Mark Aiston, because he's just walked through the door. Welcome to the dining room.
Thank you, Jeremy. This is absolutely fantastic. I love this place.
It's bizarre.
It's sort of controlled chaos.
It's true.
It's beautiful, and you have a beautiful wife and a lovely young man lovely son that I met, and that gentleman who's 100.
Yes, isn't he marvellous?
Oh, my word.
What an advertisement for tennis.
Absolutely.
I mean, if I was the tennis authority or whoever runs tennis, I'm sure there is one, I'd have him as my poster boy.
Well, 100 years of... I mean, I'm just trying to get through today, let alone get to 100.
Yeah, well, I was hoping he was going to say, well, I'm on... QV10, and you can get it at the chemist, and I've been taking it since I was a child, and, well, here's the result. But apparently there's no sort of secret to his longevity.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. I wonder, that was his son that was with him, wasn't it?
Yes, that's Mike Young.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask him whether he drinks.
Mm. Probably not.
Probably
maybe.
not.
Yeah, probably not. Just guessing that.
I don't know. What an interesting life, flying aeroplanes and, romancing the world and doing things that could be done a lot more safely than they could be done today, back in the 1930s and 40s.
And has a great attitude too. I think that's really important to getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do.
Imagine all the things that you've seen in 100 years.
Well, you mentioned the tennis. I just wonder whether tennis was invented when he was born, for heaven's sake.
I can tell you that the day is auspicious not only for the visit of this wonderful gentleman, but in 1793, on this day, tennis is first mentioned in an English sporting magazine.
For heaven's sake. Wow, 1793.
Now, maybe it was played, but didn't sort of warrant anyone giving it a mention. But tennis officially sort of existed on this day, from this day in 1793.
Great guest. And I was just saying to your wife, Caroline, that I think it's a wonderful thing what you're doing, Jeremy. I think obviously 10, 15 years ago you couldn't do this. No. And I think one of the keys, and I was talking to Andy about this earlier.
Andy Martin, who's here.
Yes. I should put Andy into context, yeah. And Andy, who was part of this wonderful thing.
And this gentleman, Tony Denton.
Tony is fantastic.
Has encouraged, invented, installed.
He's the tech man.
Oh, yeah. he's just the...
Richard Pascoe is the tech man, yes. I think he's patented that.
Of course.
But I was going to say, Jeremy, I think it's wonderful that you're able to do this because you have so much and I don't mean to sound patronising or anything, but you have such wonderful history. You have a great connection with your audience. There are still many, many, many people who love you, and it's just great that you and others who may be in a similar position, who aren't working for a commercial station anymore, can do it and continue to do what they love doing, and not just for you, but obviously for the listeners. I think it's great.
Well, I hope so. And people sometimes say to me, how many people do you have listening? Or there's the podcast during the week and the Facebook page. And I really don't know, and I don't ask, and I frankly don't care, because if there was one person, I would be doing the program as enthusiastically as I would be doing it if there were 1 million people.
Of course.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Commercial radio is obsessed with numbers, of course. If they don't get the numbers in the ratings, they try to spin them in some manner, they're number one with left-handed paper hangers or something.
Yeah, of course. And it's all, and not that I'm here to knock commercial radio, because it's been very good to me. And
me too.
Yeah. But it is run by numbers because they need to survive with what they make as a result of what they sell.
I've always believed that you survive and thrive in commercial radio by getting results. Now, just because you've got people listening doesn't actually mean that you're reaching them, that you're motivating them, you're persuading them. I mean, I've always believed that the clients, the sponsors, always know. They don't even bother, the ones who are getting results, they're not even bothered with the ratings, because they know what advertising they spend actually works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll stick with you. All you got to do is to just keep getting them results.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that, and again, I'm always a bit careful with what I say publicly about this, but in my view, and I'd be interested in your view as well, and maybe you're alluding to that, then content is king. I know it's a cliche, but good content is so important, and providing a great service. And I just feel that we're still heading away from that and coming up with, stuff that doesn't really matter, but maybe generates interest with the masses because they are more concentrated on that. I don't know. I know that sounds a bit hypocritical in a way, or diametrically sort of opposed to what I'd...
By that, do you mean opinion, or do you mean by content, do you mean...
Something that matters, Jeremy, something that is genuinely important.
The trick is, of course, this is where great producers, and Caroline is a great producer. She's been you were my producer for how many years? I can't remember. A lot of years. Probably longer than we're married, I would think. Anyway, but the thing about doing a program, the producer is key.
Absolutely. And I think they're underrated too, by the way.
Well, they can make you or break you. It's almost like the person on the telephone switchboard. They can make you or break you as well. But the idea of somebody who has a feel for the news of the day and maybe what is going to make that phone ring as a topic better than some other topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that's lighter.
It's a feel, and you can't teach anyone that.
No, you can't. And because you're experienced as a broadcaster, the line about Caroline and a producer is so apt as well, because without that good producer, the team is important, but the more people that understand that philosophy, the better program it's going to be.
Yeah.
And again, in my view, the more people, the more listeners you will generate, or at least the listeners that you are aiming for. You're never going to get everyone.
No, and you can't please everyone either.
No, absolutely.
Well, that goes for management as well.
Yep, that's true. That's very true. Yes, never a truer word has been said.
I had an occasion the other day. I mentioned it on the Facebook page and the podcast thing that.
Podcast thing.
Well, it's still all a miracle to me.
I love that.
It's a miracle. Yeah. I don't understand it. Yeah. I just think it comes out of the ether in some sort of black magical way. By the way, you can ring us and you can talk to both of us, Mark Aiston and me, 0491 65 68 60, and you can introduce any subject you like. But they were talking on a Melbourne station about inflation, and I thought, well, I've introduced this idea before, so I'll put my 2 cents worth in and give them a ring. And my idea was, and I've floated it before, that you make inflation tax deductible.
Yep.
Just basically, you're saying that every dollar you have is being devalued by inflation, and the extent of that devaluation you can, at the end of the financial year, claim as a deduction, like any expense. And the government wouldn't like that at all.
No, of course not.
No. Anyway,
I'd be horrified.
I rang. I didn't get past the switchboard because the young lady said, I explained that. I said, you just make inflation tax deductible. There's this little bit of dead silence. And she said, she couldn't have been more than 15 years old. And she said, what's tax deductible mean?
You're pushing up a hill there, right from the start.
Anyway, needless to say, I wasn't put through. Anyway, look, you've got to have people around you who've been around the block once or twice and know something about life.
I can remember the very first time I ever appeared on radio was, bless his heart, Jeff Medwell.
Oh, yes.
Who of course, and Jeff passed, hasn't he? Jeff passed a while back, yeah. And I was...
You can't sue, so it's all right.
So I was working for my father in the gym in Hindley Street at the time. I was 14 years of age, Jeremy, and I actually rang Jeff about something that was going on in Hindley Street, and that it was a little bit, bit violent and we needed more police and stuff like that. And he allowed me to say it, but I got the feeling that he still felt a little bit uncomfortable. I could feel it, and then eventually, as you would know is possible, you sort of thank the person, pull down their fader and say thank you for that, and then very quickly move on to the next one. But that was the first time I ever spoke to anyone on radio. But no, I'm very passionate about radio, and I'm very passionate about authenticity.
Yes.
And that's not to say that I would never work for an FM station again, but a lot of what goes on an FM station, a lot of it is contrived, and I never really found that comfortable. I never really found it comfortable.
By contrived, do you mean scripted?
Not so much scripted, but there was always an end game, and they would. And again, look, I'm not giving anything away here and I'm certainly not being critical. I'm just giving my opinion. But quite often, if you had a topic to talk about and you both agreed with a certain aspect of that topic, then we wouldn't do that topic. We needed to do a topic where there was yin and yang. I mean, that's just a basic example.
Disagreement, yeah.
Yeah. So from that point of view, I found it a little uncomfortable.
Well, it's a bit like being a lawyer. You should be able to argue both sides of any case.
Well, true. Yeah, absolutely.
If you're on the ball.
Yeah.
But my problem with FM is that, as you say, it's contrived. But I sort of look at it. They won't employ a person who talks. Well, obviously has guests and phone calls, and talks about anything and everything. There has to be a crew. Yeah. Or a cage, or a couch.
That's true. Good point.
Why? I mean, why would
They're
anyone
trendy words?
Well, why would anyone want to employ sort of 4 people when you should really only employ one good one? Lot simpler.
It's a good question. Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong. I certainly enjoyed aspects of my times working on FM breakfast shows. Obviously, I worked on AA as well, but And there were certain things that we did that I did enjoy, and that was where we got behind a genuine cause and raised money for someone, or a young boy who had cancer, or a family that was homeless, or whatever. Those sorts of things I really, really enjoyed.
Radio can help as a motivator and a congregator. It can bring people together for, as you say, a cause.
Yep.
And it's amazing how people rally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without hesitation almost.
Well, that's the power that you and people like you have.
No, I think people are selective. They're not foolish. I always have that as my ultimate fallback position, that I've got great respect for the audience. I've met people in radio who have great contempt for the audience. And I've never known why they waste their time. But the other thing about scripting things and contriving things is one of the exciting things about radio is that there is no safety net.
No.
If you do it properly, you just walk out there, you don't know what's going to happen.
Where you're going, absolutely, yeah.
No,
but that's a skill and an art, though, to be able to negotiate that and do it well.
But that's how you keep it interesting.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. That's a good point. And a very a very short example of that is a number of years ago I was doing an interview with a lady, or I was about to do an interview with a lady on Bitcoin, and I hadn't spoken to her, but the producer had. And when I introduced her to the show, she was from Western Australia, she had an accent, and I asked her about the accent, and she said she'd come from Kenya. Now, bearing in mind the interview was about Bitcoin, and I said, we'll talk about Bitcoin in a second, but if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been out here? And she said, 2 years. I brought my 2 boys. And I said, are you married? You still have your husband? She said, no, he's back in Kenya fighting. I spent 20 minutes talking to her about that, and I think we spent 2 minutes on Bitcoin. But but that's where
that's right.
That's the rabbit hole it sent me.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't know where it's going to lead.
Yeah.
Best moment on radio?
Well, I had a good moment about an hour ago. I interviewed Eddie McGuire, and Eddie, which was lovely. And
was that easy? I would thought.
Yes, it was, because I know Eddie well, and I was very grateful because I run a small radio station. I'm a general manager of a small radio station, small Italian radio station, Jeremy, but and it's a community station. But I've introduced a number of English-speaking shows because we need to diversify, and we've got an AFL Grand Final program. Later tonight, AFL Grand Final preview program, and we pre-recorded Eddie. But I rang Eddie a couple of days ago and said, look, I was sort of a bit apologetic, but I said, look, we're not a big radio station. I know you're busy. He said, Mark, it would be a pleasure. So we spent 25 minutes with him. In fact, we couldn't get him off the phone. It was beautiful. So you ask what...
He's a pro.
He is a pro, and as I said to him, and I didn't mean to embarrass him, but one of the great things about Eddie is that he is an extraordinary giver. He didn't have to do that, Jeremy. He did not have to do that. There was nothing in it for him at all. It was all what was in it for us. And he gave us 20 minutes of his time, and he told some very funny stories. And we spoke about some serious football issues. So when you say greatest moment or best moment on radio, I guess there's been a lot of them, but
that's a new one. That's a recent one, which is obviously a very good one.
Yeah, it was good fun, and I feel very, very humbled that he was able to do it for us.
In all the years that I've been sort of sitting behind one of these microphones, you get to try and simplify things or streamline things, and various sort of truths come up, and one of them is the fact that the bigger somebody is that you're talking to, the nicer he is. The only trouble you seem to have would be with the upstarts, the people who are the would-bes if they could-bes.
Yeah.
And they sort of take some pleasure out of making somebody feel small, whereas, a Bing Crosby or a Bob Hope or a John Wayne, he takes pleasure in making you feel bigger. Better. That's really intuitive of you to say that, Jeremy. And I'll give you an example with Eddie. And I don't say this to boast, I promise. I promise you. But this is what happened. So at the end of the 20-minute interview, I thanked Eddie, and I was working with another guy, Jeff, who I'm sort of mentoring a bit. And I said to Eddie, genuinely, I said, Eddie, thank you. I really appreciate it. I said, I know you're busy. And he said, you know what, Mark? And again, I promise you I'm not saying this to make myself look good. This is just what he said, but it's to your point. Eddie said, you know what, Mark? He said, you as a journalist and as a sports presenter gave so much to AFL football and to sport. He said, you did it for a long time. He said, you and I worked together when we were commentating, all around Australia. He said, I worked with you, not on the same station, but we worked in separate boxes but alongside of each other for a long time. We used to have chats together. He said, I want to congratulate you on what you've done. Now, the point I'm making is, again, I'm not saying that to build myself up. He didn't have to say that, but he made me, and I said to Jeff afterwards, the guy I did the interview with Eddie, I said, Jeff, that was a lovely thing that Eddie said then. He didn't have to say that, and I do feel good about myself. And I think Eddie likes the fact that I feel good about myself as a result of what he said. No, totally.
And that's a special person. Not everyone can do that.
No, totally.
And not everyone
agree with
wants
you.
to do it.
But the years that you spend in this business, it's a great excursion into the knowledge of human nature. Because you really do, over the years, as you know, you talk to the good, the bad and the ugly. You get to know a lot about people.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
People watching and people talking is a lot of fun.
You make a great point, and even when Maria, who I think is a regular, has been a regular...
She's rung me for years and years.
And you can feel that.
Yes.
But see, I could feel that, and I remember Maria. But you can feel in her voice, A, that she loves talking to you, and B, that she feels as though she's being listened to. And again, that's a credit to you. That's the credibility that you've built up.
That's a conversation. You're I know you don't mind talking about it, but you've had all sorts of ups and downs in your career, and it is an enormous credit to you that we've all had life throw stuff at us.
Yep.
Divorces and sackings and the whole kit and caboodle. But you must be made of very strong stuff to be back there behind the microphone, in fact, running your own radio station after having beaten some devils.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say is that everyone goes through hard times.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact of life. But I've had my ups and downs. I'm very grateful that I have another opportunity at the age of 65.
Well, you don't look 65. You're very young, 65.
It's very, very dim lighting here, Jeremy.
No, we went around taking the light bulbs
I
out.
noticed that. In fact, I felt a bit. Things were a bit creepy when I walked in.
We were on an economy drive.
Well, electricity is very expensive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but we had to balance it and say, well, all this equipment here is taking a lot of electricity. We must balance it elsewhere.
I was in a with without going into specifics, and I'm happy to, but, with time constraint. But, I was in a dark hole for 3 or 4 years, and leading up to that period of that time, due to sort of mental health and, I guess, confidence and addiction and stuff. Anyway, the point I'm making is I'm out of that now.
How did you do that, though? It's a very big ask. How did you manage that?
Well, I didn't. My sister and my very best friend Brad did for me. They saw that things were falling apart rapidly in a very significant way, in a very dangerous and very dark way. And so they invited me down, or at least Brad invited me down to a beautiful seafood restaurant down at Glenelg about 6 years ago at night. And he said, "Can you get yourself down there?" So when I got there, my sister was there. So I knew something was up. And I wasn't working, obviously. At the time I couldn't work. And they both said to me that they wanted to help me, and not we need to help you, we'd like to help you, and we're hoping that you'll help yourself. And the long and short of it is, the next day I was flying to Melbourne, and I spent three months in a rehab centre. So that was sort of the start of my recovery. I say recovery, you're always recovering. You don't recover. You're always on that recovery journey. I mean, I haven't used since, so and I'm not talking about methamphetamines or ice or heroin. I'm just talking about other stuff.
Yes.
So I haven't used for 5 years, and I say probably, you can never say never, but I don't intend to ever again.
No, well, you do. I think you do it one day at a time. That's the way I live life.
Yes,
It's one day at a time.
So so that was 5 years ago, and the journey continues, and probably about 12 months after I'd left the rehab centre, I got a phone call from Dino Mussolino, who, by the way, wants to meet you.
Oh, lovely.
He has a massive collection of cars, and he wants to meet you.
Be honoured.
Yes, and he rang me and said, "We've got a general manager's role going at Radio Italia Uno. I'd like to talk to you about it." And bearing in mind, a couple of years before that, when I was sort of still a bit wonky, I did a couple of shows on the radio station. It's community-based. Yeah. So we knew of each other. And Dino, bless his heart, gave me the opportunity. The board trusted me, and they gave me an opportunity, and I've been there ever since. And I'm very, very, very... I can't tell you how grateful I am to Dino for trusting me.
Well, but to get somebody with your experience is a very good thing. It's a coup.
But not everyone trusts someone who has been public about addiction and mental health issues. A lot of people will shake your hand and pat you on the back and say, "I'm very proud of you," but when push comes to shove and there's an opportunity to work for them privately, they may say, "Not really sure." Dino didn't do that, and I'm very grateful.
Yes. We all need people like Dino in our lives, and probably several times in our lives as we make the journey. I've often wondered, what do they do in rehab that you couldn't do yourself?
Yeah, great question. Well, for a start, it's very, what's the right word? Is
it controlled?
Thank you. It's very controlled, particularly the first month, where I spent 4 weeks down in Geelong. So there's no phones, there's no computers, in bed by 9, lights off at 10, up at 6, very community-based, working with other addicts. There were 20 of us there, and all sorts, heroin addicts, ice addicts, cocaine addicts, sex addicts, shopping addicts, all sorts.
Good God, sex addicts and shop addicts.
Oh, 100%, yeah, 100%. It's a major illness.
Would they take Caroline on, I wonder?
I'm not sure whether I should be laughing at that. Have you got a dump button? Anyway.
No, we don't actually have a dump button.
Yeah, pull the power cord out. Quick, we've got 4 seconds to go. So living for 3 months with people like that, and also there are people who had come out of jail and were spending time in there. If they spend a day in there, they get 2 more days off their sentence. So, but answering your question, I guess it was just the discipline. Yeah. It was the self-belief that was instilled in us.
Is it cold turkey, or do you?
100%.
You don't sort of wean you off?
No, not at all. In fact, if any of us are caught doing any drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. Not sure about the shopping and the sex, but anyway, you don't get a warning. You're in, because what it does is it brings everyone else down. So it's very community based, and we'd go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every single day at 12 o'clock, and then again we would go to AA meetings at 5 o'clock. So we'd be doing a lot of that, a lot of travelling, and I met some good people. I went to Melbourne just recently, and about 5 weeks ago, and said hello to two of the people that I was in there with, and they're doing well. Not everyone is. We had one gentleman who was an extreme alcoholic, and he was a dear man, and he spent 3 months in there, and the first day he left, he busted, unfortunately. He broke, and I'm not quite sure where he is now, but I sort of, not that I'm religious, but I was going to say I'll pray for him, but I mean, I hope things are good for him. Because it's a different world. I mean, it's a completely different world to what we're used to. I mean, I put my head on the pillow the first night, Jeremy, and I say this when I talk about this publicly. If I do a hosting or something and talk to people about what happened to me, I mean, I don't really like to focus on me, but I just make the point that things can go awry very quickly. So that's my warning. But when I put my head on the pillow the first night, and again, I'm not religious, but a voice sort of said, "How on earth did you get here? Only 4 years ago, George Danikian, and you were chatting on air, and you were talking about sport, and you were working on AA doing breakfast, and you had a beautiful wife and a lovely car and a lovely house. All that's gone. How did you get here, Mark?"
Can we blame George?
No, we can't. George is a friend of mine, and I'm not blaming him for that. That's one of the things that addicts are supposed to do, is to take total responsibility. But anyway, that voice was very strong, but then another voice sort of pushed it aside and said, "No, Mark, no, this is what you need to understand and believe. This is the start of the rest of your life." And from that point on, and again, I'm not religious at all, so I don't know who was saying that, where it was coming from, but, I now have been given another opportunity, Jeremy, at 60. Well, I was obviously 61 back then, but 60. But I've been given another opportunity to get my act together, to be a better person. I'm spending some time with my former wife tomorrow. Bless her heart, I'm cooking her something to eat. We're watching the grand final. Obviously we split 6 years ago. That was horrible for her. It was horrible, really. I feel terrible about that. But she's let me in her life again, so I'm very grateful for that. So I'm getting opportunities. Dino came into my life, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no excuses.
Do you have children?
I've got a beautiful daughter, Bridget, and she's 31, and she was very, very understanding throughout the whole thing, extraordinarily understanding, actually. And she's a beautiful, beautiful soul, and I love her very much, and she's a major part of my life, as I was telling Caroline earlier, as is Toby, my beautiful dog.
What sort of dog is he?
He's a Kelpie. Yeah, so when I was at my worst, Jack was my life, and he probably kept me alive, to be honest, without being too dramatic.
Dogs are wonderful.
And Jack is gone, unfortunately, but Toby has replaced him, and I see Jack through Toby's eyes, but Toby's a beautiful, and he's my life. I mean, I don't have a partner. I have no interest in meeting anyone. I meet a lot of people, but I'm not interested, and Toby is my life.
I don't know that I ever saw it here, but in Sydney I did, when I sort of started out as an office boy at 2GB. And there were, with music, sort of early days of rock and roll and bandstand. There was Cold Joy, and there were disc jockeys who had this incredible charisma, and which is basically why I fell in love with the business. It was something that I looked at with wide eyes and thought to myself, I could never imagine anything like this. Fast cars and faster women, and lots of them, and
where's that dump button?
Well, no. But you see, I saw how the other side of that less glamorous picture, the other side, less glamorous side of it, was that these people were sort of like a moth dancing incredibly close to the flame.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would burn the candle at both ends. You know, they'd go to Checkers because Al Martino would be there, or even Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. And they would get home at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they would be on the air at 9 o'clock that morning. And the thing was sort of, you could see with certain people how the lifestyle of show business was spiralling.
Absolutely.
Johnny O'Keefe was a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Because he was addicted to things that kept him up, and then he would take things to keep him down.
Yeah. And
before he knew where he was asleep behind the wheel of a car, racing from one venue to another. And he was almost killed. And he ended up dying, I don't know, he was about 42 years old when he died. Is that all he was? Yeah,
wow.
yeah. But the lifestyle, what I'm saying is show business can be fascinating, interesting, full of challenge and opportunity.
High profile.
And reward.
Recognition, yeah.
But it can also be a terribly destructive thing for some people. Did you find any elements of the fast life affecting you?
Well, yeah, and look, you've explained that really eloquently. What I'd say about me is that I worked for my father at 14 in Hindley Street for about 6 years.
Yep.
And the life in Hindley Street back then, Jeremy, was very unique. I mean, there was all sorts. It was a very eclectic group of people. There was a whole range of different people. You know, there was criminals, there was prostitutes, there was pimps, there was drug addicts.
It was bohemian.
Yeah, correct. And I was in amongst that. So that was my life. And that's a very unusual upbringing. And I loved it, and Dad loved it. And we were respected on the streets, and we very rarely got into any trouble. Obviously, that's a good thing. But I guess the point I'm making is I fell into the media, to be honest. Unlike you, I didn't sort of think, gee, I'd like to do this. I fell into it. I was a gambler. I went to the races. I met Bruce McAvaney. I started doing phantom calls. I first met you when you were at DN many years ago, when Paul Linkson was running the place. And so I started calling races way back in 1978, got that job, didn't last because I wasn't committed, went to Darwin for 2 years, happened to get a call from my mother who said there's a job at the ABC in about 1983. Why don't you apply? I applied for it, somehow got it, and that was the start of my TV career and radio career. I guess the point I'm making is I never yearned for that. I really didn't. So I was always a very reluctant person whilst I sit in front of a microphone now, but I never liked the glamour of it. I never liked the fact that you were well known. I preferred anonymity. So I never really felt that comfortable. I happened to be, without big noting, I think I happened to be good at the presenting.
Oh yes,
I was good at that.
Yes.
But so I was. It wasn't what I yearned to do, so I sort of fell into it, really. I'm grateful that I did because it gave me opportunities, but I never really sort of felt all that comfortable doing it. Would I do it again? Yeah, given the opportunity, if it's the right one, yeah. But it wasn't that it was my whole life.
No.
It wasn't that it was my whole life, and I don't know, maybe I'm a bit different. I don't know, I'm sure there's other people who feel the same who are in the media.
Yeah, what about the future? What would you like to see in the future?
For me, to keep well, to keep clean, to keep healthy, to love my dog and to be a good person, and to continue to mend that relationship with my wife. I have a small media training business where I teach people about about being interviewed in front of camera, and where I teach people how to present in front of a crowd. I do that, in a very small way. But what I am passionate about, Jeremy, is telling people about the dangers of mental health and addiction, and the dangers of you not doing anything about it and letting it spiral like it did with me.
Yeah, it's interesting how some people can, fail to see the dangers of drugs in particular. I couldn't believe, and I've got the story here somewhere. It's going back a few days, maybe a week. This woman who works for the ABC had a baby, and she called the baby methamphetamine.
That was the name of the baby.
Yeah, she called the child. She was a journalist at the ABC, and she named her new baby Methamphetamine. And here is somebody who was I don't know, trying to give society a black eye, trying to influence her baby's future, telling us that methamphetamine is as innocent as a newborn baby.
I can't comprehend that.
I can't either. This woman was a journalist at the ABC, and there was no law that said that she couldn't do it. So you've got various conflicting,
that's weird,
I suppose, opinions and beliefs about the drug culture. But I'm with you. I think it is just enormously destructive, and I've seen enough people who haven't been as lucky as you, who have done themselves incredible damage.
I'm very lucky to be sitting here, to be honest. I really am.
Well, I'm really glad that you are sitting here. What star sign are you?
I'm Virgo.
Oh, yeah.
Well, oh, look at everyone now light up the room. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that creepy?
And you know why?
Why?
September is about 9 months after Christmas, so I think we were all part of a sort of a massive, perhaps even not even remembered slip. But Henry is a Virgo too, obviously.
Henry's your boy that I met just out there?
Oh, no, tennis player.
No. Oh, Henry, sorry. Yeah, Henry, 100-year-old. He's a Virgo. Yeah. Wow, okay. Yeah. What's the date of my birth? The 27th of August.
Yeah.
Same day as Sir Donald Bradman, actually.
Oh, right. I didn't know he was a Virgo.
Yeah, and very proud of it too. No, but he is 27th of August as well. Yeah. Anyway, there's a bit of trivia for you.
No, I love it. I love it. Wonderful of you to come by.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jeremy.
so much.
Pleasure.
Great pleasure to talk with you, and a great privilege to have known you all these years.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. That's very kind of you.
Take good care of yourself.
Thank you. I will.
Mark Aiston, ladies and gentlemen.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.